And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Carrie Kohan, national child advocate, who died twice in 92 and 93 and has experienced what we would call both heaven and hell. Carrie, thank you for joining me today and welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Carrie, let's start in 92 with your first NDE and go from there.
Okay, well, in 92, I was a bartender. I had had an abortion and I was drinking far too much. I was beating myself up emotionally, physically, with alcohol specifically. And I ended up choking on my own vomit. I died drinking far too much. And immediately I slipped out of my body and I hovered over my body. And, you know, I always considered myself a really great person. You know, as a young person, I thought, I'm a good soul. I'm going to go to heaven when I die. I was really shocked with what I saw after my first death. And what the lesson was, well, first of all, what I did see was they were like demonic little beings that were coming up out of the floorboards. They were, you know, just like, you know, the movie Ghost, then they had those little black, you know, beings that were coming up and taking the spirit away. That's what I saw. And it was shocking to me because, you know, I mean, I had never tried drugs. I hadn't had a boyfriend till I was in my 20s. And overall, I was, you know, volunteer work. I was a good person. But there I was facing what we would know as the devil, toe to toe. And so I had to do a quick assessment. I had to think to myself, my gosh, okay, so if this thing is real, then there has to be a counterpart to this. There has to be, you know, we're in the world of contrast. So there has to be God or Jesus. So I called in God and Jesus. I literally said, God and Jesus, be by my side now. And to my surprise, they showed up. Creator was to my right, Jesus was to my left. And immediately when this evil thing saw them, he ran and literally disappeared. He ran through the windows and was gone. And so I had the opportunity then and there to speak with Creator and say, why me? Why did this happen? And, you know, the message back was that I was vulnerable. I had no faith. I had no self-worth. And it felt that it could take my spirit. It could take my soul because I was not grounded any longer. I had no faith. And so there I was standing in an empty room because Creator and Jesus disappeared. And I thought, okay, I'll go lie down. I cleaned up the bed because I had been sick and put all my laundry in the corner and cuddled myself in the bed thinking, you know, did that actually happen? And that's when I looked up at the sky or up at the roof, and this black smoke, it was like a thick smoke started to come through the ceiling and down the walls. And I started to panic thinking, oh no, the thing's back. You know, okay, God, I do believe in you. I do believe in Jesus. I started to backtrack because, you know, just moments later, I was thinking, I don't know if that really happened. Did that actually happen? And then this, you know, the smoke started to come in. And that's when I was like, okay, just kidding. I really do believe in you. And, but the black smoke still started to come. And so I got down on my hands and knees again, and I started to pray again, please, you know, I need your help. And I heard this booming, deep voice say, you know, you're safe, just rest. And something to that effect, right? So I laid down on the bed and I thought to myself, I give up. You know, if this is my time, I just give up. And this black smoke surrounded me, and all of a sudden I was in total blackness, and I felt like I was floating, but I couldn't see my body. I couldn't see anything. It was like my consciousness was in this black void, is what they came to tell me what it was. And it was a neat place because I'm Aboriginal, I'm Métis from Canada, right? So I'm Ojibwe and Cree, and our elders would teach us, that Raven is the gatekeeper of the black void, where all illusion begins. And I realized this is the black void I'm in, right? And there was so much love. It was like what people talk about heaven. They talk about being in heaven and feeling that utter love. That's what I felt in the black void. And so I was able to ask a lot of questions. And what was really neat was I came to understand that when you would think of a question or say a question, it would roll out over like black. It almost looked like oil slicks, right? But it would go out to the horizon, and then all of a sudden this waves of wisdom, I called it, would come zooming back and wash over me with the answers. And I did this for what felt like 10 hours. But, time we came to learn, or I came to learn later on in my second near-death experience, that time isn't time. So at any rate, I stayed in the black void. I was downloaded with a lot of information, mainly about how, your thoughts are so powerful, and that in the black void, I could not create any negative thoughts. I tried because I had a habit of doing this. I had a habit of beating myself up, emotionally, and having really negative dialogue. And that's why I think I found myself in my first death. But no, it wouldn't let me even expand on any negative thoughts. It was only positive thoughts in the black void. So it was like a reboot for me. If you were to think of this world as a computer generated program, and that this is an illusion, it was really, the black void is like a reboot where you go in and you start all over and you start to think, okay, what do I really want in life? So I came out of the black void by the questions stopped, and it just became very still. And I realized then that this was my time to just rest and digest all that was given to me. And then I woke up, and it was daylight out. And I thought, wow, okay, that was one heck of a dream. I really, because there was no proof that I had died. And so I had to ask for confirmation. I was like, okay, are you still there? And I was looking up in the room, and there was no booming voice. There was no one there. And I thought, okay, maybe I just thought all this up. And as I was walking towards the door, to get the laundry and bring it outside, I heard from just behind me, and in the tender part of my right ear, this voice came in, and it was a male voice, very clear male voice. And he said, "Go to the door. There's a surprise there for you." And so I had to turn around quick. I whipped around because it sounded like someone was standing right there, and there was no one there. And there's someone at the door. The dogs are barking. Anyways, so I whipped around, and there was no one there. And so I thought, okay, I'll play the game. I opened the door, and there at my mat, I'm in an apartment building in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, downtown Vancouver. And in those days, it was a Saturday, and those days the newspapers were like this thick. And I laughed because I was illiterate. I didn't read. And I would have never ordered the newspaper. It's just something that I would not do. I wouldn't read the paper. So I thought, okay, I picked up the paper, and I thought, now what do I do? And I heard again clearly, look at the classified sections. So I opened up the newspaper, and there was this ad, and it was about this big, and it was a huge frame, black frame, like you could not miss it, right in the middle of the page. And it was for what I affectionately came to call my hippy dippy house. It was a suite that was available in this large heritage home in Kitsilano, Vancouver. And it had a workshop space in the back. And it was a bunch of people that lived together communally. And we were non-smoking, non-drinking, and, just vegetarian kind of lifestyle. So I ended up cleaning up my act for the next year. And to my surprise, I ended up dying for a second time.
Before we go there, though, let me
Yeah.
ask you a few questions.
Sure.
So when you were there with God and Jesus and
Yeah.
you were told that you were vulnerable, would
Hmm.
you say at that time in your life you were atheist?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. I considered myself an atheist because I didn't want to believe in God. I had had an abortion. I was told that there was so much scar tissue inside me that I wouldn't have any more children. And I was one of the first in British Columbia at that time to have an abortion because at that time, it was the very first day abortions were legalized after being illegal for a period of time. So there were bombings of abortion clinics. It was such a, a tough issue because it was volatile. So having that abortion, I really didn't want to have it, but there was so much pressure and circumstances around it that I went through with it. So I chose to stop believing in anything beyond what I could see, smell, hear, feel, and sense. Um, because I didn't want any judgment day. I didn't want to believe that someday I was going to go to heaven and be judged and sent to hell because, being brought up Catholic, and being brought up in a military school. My father was military. So, I was indoctrinated into believing that, be fearful of God, be fearful of that judgment day. And so, my first and second death, I was absolutely petrified of that judgment that, you know, I was going to be, sent to hell forever. So I was living hell here on earth because of that, out of fear.
Do you think it's possible that either the abortion
Hmm.
or the fact that you had been drinking alcohol had anything to do with you being in hell?
Mm, okay. I think my hell was I was already living hell by beating myself up from the abortion. And alcohol was the instrument that I used to beat myself up. I drowned myself in alcohol out of sorrow and shame of what I had done. And, I see I'm Métis, and so I had had a gift of sight since I was a little girl. I've had so many experiences since I was a little girl. And just before I had the abortion, I had lucid dreams where I saw that little girl. She was blonde hair, blue eyed. I held her in my arms. I remember in the lucid dreams, making sure the house was childproof. I could smell this infant. I could feel her, So to have an abortion and to say goodbye to her, I heard her name. Her name was Penelope, but Penny for short. Creator actually gave me her name, and so I really thought that no, I shouldn't have an abortion. But it turned out that my fiance at the time, his mother died on the day that he was going to go and tell her. And the father really was adamant that he didn't want to have any children out of wedlock because in those days, in the mid to late 80s, it would be so shameful to have a child out of wedlock. It was a different time. And so, yeah, it was a living hell knowing this infant, her name was Penny. And yeah, so it was my hell that I lived in for 4 years, 4.5 years. And finally I, was able to escape it by dying.
How did God and Jesus appear to you?
Exactly how I had grown up seeing them. Um, God was to my right. He had the beard, he had the white hair, he had the shroud on, and Jesus had just like, it's funny because he appeared different in my second near death than the first. The first, I didn't really even see him much, but he did have the brown hair, the brown beard, and again the looser clothing on. But just radiant. Both of them were so radiant, so beautiful, and kind. You could feel the love from both of them. It was profound.
Can you share with us any of the questions that you asked and what the answers were?
So in the black void, we talked about thoughts, right? And the power of your thoughts. And it was really interesting that I wasn't able to have any negative thoughts while in that black void. And so I was shown that our greatest problem as humanity right now is thought pollution, right? Because our thoughts are energy, and that thought energy leaves us and goes out into the atmosphere, but it actually keeps traveling. And I remember hearing about that years later from a scientist that was saying that thoughts never end. It's an energy that just keeps traveling, and it goes into other galaxies and other dimensions. It is endless. And so what they were showing me in the black void is that we can actually take control of our thoughts, and we should. This is why we're here. This is one of the biggest reasons why we're here in the human experiment, is that it is for us to take responsibility of our thoughts and to clean up our stinking thinking, right? And so in order to do that, we literally have to call back our negative thoughts, and it's like you put them together like a paper, and you throw that paper into the cosmic garbage can. And I could see this cosmic garbage can in the sky. It was like a basketball hoop, right? And you threw it in, and as it went into the bin, it was transformed immediately into love and prosperity and joy and everything good, because as we know, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed or transmuted. In 1993 or 92, with the black void, I didn't know any of this stuff. I had never heard of sacred geometry. I didn't know about multiple dimensions. We didn't know about quantum physics, really, the mass majority of people at that time. And so this was all new. So they were showing me that it's our responsibility to, like I said, clean up the stinking thinking thoughts. And the way to do that is to ask a better question. So when you start on negative thoughts, you have to ask yourself, okay, is this the best thought that I can have about this situation? And if it's no, then you have to take that stinking thinking thought, put it in the cosmic garbage can, and replace it with a better thought. And this is what I was being shown in the waves of wisdom. They were showing me through images, through auditory, like mind to mind discussions, that simply keep asking, is this the best thought that I can have about this situation? And if you keep hearing no, then you got to keep going until, is this the best thought? What is the best thought that I can have about this situation? And then have that thought. And if you get a yes, this is getting up there. This is probably one of the best thoughts that you can have. Then you know that you're in alignment with who you are to move forward in through the black void, to be able to create the life that you want to create. Because in that black void, there is no room for negativity.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Let's move forward to your second NDE.
Okay. So a year later, I was packing up all of my stuff, because I had met a really lovely young man, and he was 5 years younger than me. I was 29 and he was 24, 25. And we were engaged after meeting each other for 2 weeks. And I remember thinking, gosh, am I doing the right thing? He was a real dynamo. And he was business partners with Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker at the time. So I had been volunteering with Tony for years, and finally met with my first husband. So anyways, packing away, and I was feeling regret because I was leaving the hippy dippy house. I loved this house and all my roommates. I had like 11 to 22 roommates. It depended, right? And we were good friends. And so all of a sudden I started to feel the chest pains, and I had chest pains a lot of my life. Long history of early deaths in our family from heart disease. And so anyways, I felt the chest pains. And so I started to lean over and cough to stop the arrhythmia, and that didn't stop it. So I ended up making a deal with myself that I'll lay down, and if I still have it when I wake up, I'll go to the hospital. This is a routine that I had. And I laid down, and boom, this this, it was like someone sitting on my chest and a knife coming in, and it was so strong. Immediately, again, I slipped out of the top of my head and was hovering over my body. I was like, not again. Are you kidding me? And so as I'm hovering there, this huge brown bird came from my right and swooped down and got me and picked me up from behind my neck and lifted me up. And we went out of my room through the roof, and we just kept going up, 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 up. And I could watch as, we were leaving Earth down below. It was really an amazing experience. And I mean, I had had a lot of out-of-body experiences up until that time, but nothing like this, because we went into clouds, and the clouds got so bright that they were blinding white. And it was like we almost turned a corner and went into like another cloud structure, and it was a big open white space. It was, I often say that it was like the Matrix, that blinding white room that he was in, Neo was in. That's how it was. It took a while for my eyes to adjust, but also my ears, because the pressure was really strong. Like it felt like, a lot of pressure on the ears. So anyways, the bird gently put me down on a beautiful, it was like a stool, but it was made out of a cloud. And as I sat on it, instantly I could feel the love that was in this room. It was overwhelming, and it was so beautiful. And so I'm looking down at this stool thinking, how is that emanating up through me? Like, how is this working? What is this made out of? And just then I looked up, because I could sense someone in front of me. I looked up, and it was God, or what I knew to be God. And I remember he shocked me so much that it made me jump. And all of a sudden, all of these images started to be downloaded. And what I realized very quickly was that I was seeing him as what I would believe God would look like, because that's what I grew up with, the older man with the beard and the white and the shrouds and everything. And I realized that he goes by many different names and many different images. And so I had to ask, what do I call you? And he said, it matters less the name you call me, as long as you call my name. And I was like, wow, that's beautiful, right? And so I decided to call him God. But I realized at that moment that if I had been brought up with any other faiths, I would have seen this pure light energy as different forms, right? So he was appearing to me as God, because that's what I grew up as. And so I was actually generating this illusion, this image of God through my beliefs. And so I soon saw that God was creative through all the different religions, because that was what I was asking was, why do we have all these religions? Why don't you just give us one? Why do you go through many names? And what came through was that in order for humanity, which is many different species, I believe, alien species that have come here, and hybrids of different species, they all come with different beliefs. They all come with different thought processes, because this is a human experiment of love, right? Of finding love, working with love, working united in love. And so what I saw was that through all of these different belief systems and religions, we're all being brought together, united in what he called the spirit song. And the spirit song, I asked, well, what is that? And what I got was that it is a sound, and it's sound and music combined. And it's like a song of and for the masses that bring us together, united in a vibration of love. And that is ultimately our goal here. That is why we're here, is to come together in the vibration of love through sound, through music, right? Combined. So when 2020 was happening, all I kept hearing was, you need to vibrate. You need to raise the vibration here on Earth. We need to use our sound use our music. You know, humanity is one of the few species on this planet that can use sound the way that we do, right? We can sing, we can talk, we can bark, we can do whatever. You know, there's so many sounds that we are able to make, but in that we're able to raise our vibration. And that's what I was shown, was that this is really, I think the Holy Grail is that we have the ability to raise our vibration united in music, in sound, and in with the intention of love.
Did you happen to hear any type of music during any one of your
No.
NDEs?
No. Well, actually, let me think about that. I've heard music a couple of times, but not. I don't think it was through the NDEs. I've heard music downloaded. I've heard original songs that have just come, and they were so marvelous. They were shared with me ever since, you know, coming back from my near-death experiences. But while in heaven, I didn't hear music. I just felt the sound. I felt the vibration of love. And when you feel it, it's like it is you. There is nothing else. It's in you, it's of you, it's all around you. And so I guess I was the song, right, at that moment.
Why do we keep coming here over and over again? And is there an endpoint to it?
That's a good question. Yeah, I learned all about that. Okay, the endless loop, they called it. I'll go fast forward a little bit. I met with Jesus. We talked about the power of words, and we can go back to that if you remind me. After that, I met with the Council of Men. Now, the Council of Men created a half circle table, and God was in the center, and then there were elders on this table. There were 12 of them in total. God was number 13, and I was in the center facing this semicircle. And the elder of the Council of Men, he was the one that was talking about the endless loop. And so that leads me to suicidal souls or people that end their lives early. Okay, so he turned to me and said, we're really, really pleased that you did not end your life early, because there were many times that I considered it, 3 specific times in my lifetime. And they said, because when you do that, it creates a fracture in the timeline. And what we have here is very much like the Matrix. The Matrix was more truth than, you know, more reality than what we can imagine. And so they said, what happens is you then create a loop, an endless loop within the endless loop. So we're already in this endless loop, which is a 5,000 years cycle, humanity experiment. But by ending your life early, you actually create an endless loop within the endless loop. And that complicates things. That delays things greatly. So the soul that decides to end their lives early has 2 ways to go. When they leave here, they either go straight to what I knew to be the white void. So there's a white void, a gray void, and a black void. Black void we already talked about, and that was all love and all the answers and where the illusion begins. The gray void is darkness. It's like, you know, hell. It's the trap. And I'll talk about that in a second. And the white void is what we know as heaven. So the soul that has ended their life early has 2 ways to exit. One is to go straight into the white void, and there they have the life review, they rest, they, you know, find the gumption in themselves to come back and start all over. And that's exactly what they do. So they start all over again, and it's in a parallel dimension that they have to come back. Well, not have to. Actually, yeah, it is have to. They come back and they start in the same life with the same friends, the same parents, the same situations, everything. They're making the same choices, and they get all the way to where they committed suicide. And they either have to make a conscious decision to either, you know, get enough strength to overcome that situation and move on with their life, or they continue on this, Groundhog Day repeated cycle of life,
So
right?
it's like a loop within a loop.
It is a loop within a loop, exactly. And so we have a greater loop that we are in, united, and that was that 5,000 year cycle. It always was ending at the end of the Mayan calendar. This is the very first incarnation that we've moved beyond the end of the Mayan calendar. We've always ended at the end of the Mayan calendar. So this is a whole new aspect, and that's why so many of us are so excited about where we are right now, because this is the time where we can actually transcend and move beyond and step into a consciousness in humanity that has never been experienced before, because this is the first timeline, I believe, that has broken that cycle. And it took everyone working united in love to be able to do that.
Would you say that we were trapped or forced into this 5,000-year loop against our will?
Oh, no. I think that we're all volunteers. Is like, yeah, let's do Earth. This was the greatest challenge. And the souls that are here now, from every, all 7 or 8 billion of us, it's like we're cells in a body, and we're all learning to work together to make that body healthy. And it can die, if enough of us give up on ourselves and we die as an individual cell within the body, or we can say, to heck with this. You know what? I'm turning it around, and I'm going to get healthy, and I'm going to get in alignment with, the energetic whole. And when I do that, the entire body, the entire Gaia will become healthy. So no, I believe that we all came here meeting with a counselor before we came here. We sat down, we decided what it was that we wanted to learn, and we chose this life consciously.
So are you saying that when we sign up to come here, we're not just signing up for one life, we're signing up for a 5,000-year cycle?
Yes, it is one life, but that goes back into past life cycles or past life regression. A lot of people think that we have past lives. I don't know if we actually have a past life. I think we have memory, cellular memory of past lives that are handed down genetically. So the past lives that I'm full memory of, like of Anne Boleyn, right? I think that was in a timeline, because if you follow my timeline, it was a illegitimate, daughter of King Louis XIV, right? So we have that timeline all the way back to France. So somewhere in there is a memory of Anne Boleyn, because I've had that conscious memory, right? And so, yeah, I think that it's debatable right now. It's something that I've toyed with a lot. Do we actually have the past lives, or do we have cellular memory of past lives because we've come in somewhere in that 5,000-year cycle? I don't know. Yeah, it could be either, because what is time? Time, that's the whole thing. That's what was being shown to me in the Black Void was, and also with the Council of Men. The elder showed me, he put his hands out to the side and he goes, "You're thinking in a linear way," because I was asking, well, how can a suicidal soul come back and start off with their same parents in this? And we didn't know in 1990 about parallel dimensions and parallel universes and all that. And so quantum physics wasn't quite there yet. And so, or we didn't know about it. And so the elder showed me time. He put his arms out to the side and he said, "Time is like this." And as he reached his arms way out, a rod of light lit up. And he said, "You're thinking time is like this, that, you have you're here for what, 70, 80, 100 years. But actually time is like this." And he spun the rod and it went straight up and down. And he said, "Past, present, future is all happening simultaneously. All you have is the now. It is all happening like that." So what we think is a 5,000 year cycle is actually just a blip in time. But our mission, our goal here is to end the 5,000-year loop, which we have for the very first time, I believe, because I was part of it. And you know, they kept saying, you got to go back, you got too much to do. I had no idea some of the stuff that I was going to do. And the end of the Mayan calendar was a big part of it. That's a whole nother broadcast. And I hope that I can come back and share that one sometime.
Me too.
But yeah, but the time itself is all but an illusion. But it's a tool that we need to have here in order to digest everything and grow spiritually. Because I'll tell you this, what I was shown with especially suicidal souls, or souls that, especially with souls that choose to leave early, is that, what was I going to say about that? It's, forgive me. Oh, I remember now. Okay, so the thing about souls that choose to leave early, you know, they're putting themselves at a great risk of being in that endless loop, because it takes a lot of effort to actually find the strength to move out of it. But the other thing is, before we come here, we remember to forget, right? We remember to forget our lives before, who we are. It is a huge exploratory mission that we're on. And this is an opportunity for us to grow spiritually. Okay, so the elders said to me, you can leave Earth, you can not leave Earth. Earth is a time where you can grow yourself beyond measure spiritually. This is an amazing tool that we have here. Or we can return worse off than whence we came. And in my first death, I was returning worse off than whence I came. I was a beautiful little sprite, you know, happy little girl arriving here, really bright, really beautiful little soul. And I beat myself down so much over the years, and others beat me down as well. Not I allowed them to. And so I was leaving this planet worse off. And that's why they were having counsel on me. That's why they were meeting. The Council of Men were meeting and having counsel on me what to do, because, you know, I was going to be doing some things here on Earth that really needed to be done. And they could see one of their soldiers as such, you know, going to be taken off the field very, very soon. So it turned out that in the end, I did find the strength, and I did actually ask for help. And in doing so, I turned everything around. So my second near-death experience, it basically, they showed me the 5 lessons of life, and that is forgiveness, compassion, faith, trust, and unconditional love, all wrapped up in gratitude. And so those elements are why we're here, to apply those 5 lessons of life, not only to everyone else around us, but to ourselves as well. Because when we think about people that have hurt us, you know, are you able to say, I've forgiven them, I have compassion for them, I have faith and trust that we're in the right path, you know, working together. There was a reason why all of this happened, and do I unconditionally love them? And if you say no to any of that, well, then you need some work to do. But more importantly, because I believe it's less about them and it's actually more about you, because this is your spiritual growth. This is your illusion. This is your time. Everything that you are thinking, you are manifesting, right? And I wrote about that in the book, was the whole mechanics of manifestation, and how, you know, these gossamer threads in your DNA come out when you are manifesting, when you are thinking, and they go zooming out, and they call in corresponding thoughts and people and solutions for you, and you know, they help with your manifestation. So they showed me this on the other side, how to manifest, and I needed that when I came back, because they kept saying, you got to go back. And I was like, no, this is too nice. I'm not going back there. Hell no. that was my living hell. Even in the good times, it was nothing like what the white void was like. And they kept saying, no, you got to go back, you got too much to do. They finally showed me through a 9D hologram, this sphere popped up, and it was a sphere, and in the sphere was a cube, and in the cube was a cubic pyramid. So it's like 4 pyramids that fit together in a cube, if you can imagine. And when all the points of the 4 pyramids come together, there was a light in the center that lit up, and I could see movement in that light. And as soon as you look in the light, it would draw you in, and you would be in the image. So they showed me through this 9D hologram that my 2 children that I was going to have, because when I first arrived with my second near death, I didn't think I was going to have any more children because of all the scar tissue I had from my abortion, right? And so I was so excited to get back. But I needed the tools, because when I did get back, we had a 3-time convicted PED after my daughter, and he tried to come into our house and kidnap her out of her crib. And so I chased him out with a carving knife, and that was my start of 17 years as a volunteer national child advocate. And in that whole process, what I came to learn was my mom's words were so powerful, and that is, today's tragedy is tomorrow's blessing. And what I saw as a near tragic event, this guy coming in and trying to kidnap my daughter, was actually probably the greatest blessing, because I ended up helping to bring Amber Alert into Canada with MLA Heather Forsyth. She and I worked together for 2 years on that project. And then I went on to write and amend 14 laws to protect children in my home country. And yeah, it's been a journey.
That's fantastic.
Mm.
But
the kicker about all that, the kicker about all that is that I was learning disabled. I couldn't read. And yet I was able to write these laws and debate them in Parliament against some of the finest lawyers in the country and win. But I believe that it was all spirit driven and given, because 2 nights before I'd be flying into Ottawa to meet with the Justice Committee of Canada, I would be downloaded with information. I would have a sense that I should go to the computer and I'd type in some words, and all of a sudden a study would come up from the United States. I go, oh, this is brilliant, because I could read short little paragraphs. I couldn't read long pieces. But if it was broken down, it was like, Spirit knew what to give to me in order for me to print that out, take it to Ottawa, and be able to, present my case, and was very effective with it.
If we get back to past lives,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that if we are all connected, then the past lives we think we have are just somebody else's past lives that we're connecting with?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I've often thought, is this my thought or someone else's thought? Because when I was in the white void, Creator actually, when I had agreed to come back, Creator had asked me, if you were to ask any question that you could use when you go back to help humanity, what would your question be? And so I hum and hawed, I didn't know what to ask. All of a sudden, this beam of white light came zipping around, and again, it went into that tender spot behind my right ear, and boom, my third eye lit up, and it was like the light bulb moment. I had the question that was, okay, I understand that God loves everyone, the rapists, the murderers, everyone that, is doing heinous things on the planet. How could you love everyone? And he goes, oh, that's easy, like this. And I went back into another situation where I saw my memory self and my counselor, and we were talking about, I was observing, and we were talking about, my life that I was about to live. And one of the things that she was talking to me about, the 5 lessons of life, right? The forgiveness, compassion, faith, trust, and unconditional love. She was teaching me how we all are coming here to apply these. And that's really why we're here. so the counselor came over to me and she started to speak to me, and I was having images, and then she got really quiet, and my thoughts were still going about these 5 lessons. And for a moment there, I had this realization that, wait a minute, that's actually not my thought. And then I actually thought, is this my thought or is this her thought that she's putting into my mind? And I've had that many times since arriving, right? So I've often wondered, is this original thought, especially with technology right now? There's a lot with technology that we can't name because they would be bleeped out, you know, and with mind stuff, right? So I think that it's not even spiritual, it's more technical, now, technological, I should say, now, that we have to really be conscious of your own thoughts. So I think that's where it's like a muscle. You have to build your muscle, your spiritual muscle, through meditation, through prayer, through, mindfulness. And when you build that muscle, no one can bamboozle you. No one can hoodwink you as such. Barbara Messiniak talks about that, in Bringers of the Dawn. She talks about how humanity has been hoodwinked many times because it's so easy to do. But if you build that internal muscle, and if you have the strength, and if you truly believe, that you have the abilities, you have the power to transcend, to move beyond this third dimension. And the way to do it is through meditation, I believe, to build that, ignite your core, ignite your chakras, activate them, activate your third eye. It's essential.
Earlier, you mentioned that we live in a matrix or simulation.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Okay, so I remember watching the movie The Matrix the first time and going, wow, okay, that's real. The movie is actually more real than not. And the reason why was, when I was younger, I've had out-of-body experiences being Métis Aboriginal. I was taught to, well, actually, we didn't even know I was Native until many years later. My mom was so ashamed of her Native heritage that she never spoke of it. She was a survivor of the residential schools, and so she never spoke of her past ever. But she raised us like we were Native. So we had a great respect for nature and for being open, and she was a gifted psychic. And so as a little one, I had the ability to see things. And one of my first lucid dreams that I remembered was the Matrix. And I was awake yet sleeping, and I woke up, and all of a sudden I was traveling high speed through like ley lines. Didn't know what ley lines were back then. Didn't know what a matrix was, but I went into Earth, and I was like, just flying up and over these grids. And then I came up and saw the Earth as a matrix. It was a grid. And I realized at that moment that this is all an illusion as such. It not an illusion. At that time, it was more like it was a computer program, but we didn't even know what computers were at that time, right? It just was an interesting aspect. But then everything became pixelated. And that's when I realized it wasn't real. As a little girl, I knew that there was something here that you could put your hand through, and it was like moving, balls of light. There was a vibration, and everything became pixelated. So I've had really neat experiences ever since I was very young. And so the near-death experiences, I often thought to myself, why didn't I have a near-death experience that, could prove that I actually died? Because both deaths, I was in my bed for hours, it was dark when I died, and it was light when I woke up. And I remember thinking, was it a dream? Did it actually happen? There was no one that, was pounding on my heart to wake me up. Nothing like that. And when I was in the white void, I actually asked, am I dead? And the answer was, you're neither dead nor alive. You have the choice at this point whether or not you return. We'd like you to return because you have a lot to do, but you can stay here. And so it was an option at that point. So when I did come back, I remember asking for confirmation. And that was interesting because the first death, immediately I was able to hear, like, with such clarity, that voice that was behind. I spun around and I could hear him, right? So there were things that were starting to happen after the first death that were unexplainable. But the second death, I asked for confirmation because there was so much that was given to me in that second death, the 5 lessons of life being the big part. And and uh, 24 hours later, I was in the Vancouver International Airport, and at that time it was just under construction. It would have been 1993, and they were building a whole new top floor. And there was no security back then, right? I mean, you could roam around an airport, not a big deal. And so I went up. I arrived for some reason like an hour and a half early, and crazy amount early for to pick my fiance up at the time, my future first husband. And so I went up the escalator or stairs, I can't remember. Anyways, I was up in this construction zone, and it was really wide open. There was a lot of space, and there was one store that had been built, and it was a library or a bookstore. And so it was all lit up. It was actually just opening up. And so I walked in, and the whole wall had Betty Eadie's Embraced by the Light book. And it was just like a whole wall, and bookstores don't do that, right? It was, the whole wall was covered in this one book. And so I went over and picked up the book, opened it, thought, okay, I'm supposed to read this, I guess, haha. And because there were so many, right? And I opened it up, and there on the page was Council of Men. It was the chapter, and that was the title. And I just about flipped out because I had never heard of the Council of Men. Here I had the near-death experience with the Council of Men. I was asking for confirmation. There it was in writing. And I struggled through reading because I since have become a much better reader, but at that time I couldn't read very well. And so I did struggle through the reading, but I came to understand that Betty Eadie, she had very similar experience, right down to when she met the Council of Men. She went, well, where are the women? And I had the same reaction, where are the women? Like, this doesn't make sense. But I needed to heal with masculine energy.
Well, who are the men that make up the council?
They were elders. There was one in charge. And okay, so what I was shown was it was an illusion of masculine energy, because it was the masculine energy that I needed at that time to heal, because it was through the masculine energy that I had had the abortion, and and through the masculine energy that I had been hurt as a 3-year-old, and right. So they had brought me there to heal that aspect of me, so that I could return and do all the good stuff that I needed to do.
What are their thoughts on abortion on the other side?
I believe that everything happens for a reason. And, when I look, it goes back to my mom's words, today's tragedy is tomorrow's blessing. So there was no judgment of anything, including the abortion, because I don't want to give away the end of the book, but it's really beautiful, and it has to do with that. So, it's really beautiful, because had I not had the abortion, I wouldn't have gone through all that I did, all the lessons. I wouldn't have met with the devil. I wouldn't have, gotten to that point that I, out of necessity, called in God and Jesus, and wouldn't have had the near-death experiences. Wouldn't have written the book. Wouldn't have helped literally tens of thousands of people now. So everything has been. It goes back to when I was hurt at 3 years old. That could have been a tragedy, but when when the man came in to try to kidnap my daughter, I knew his energy immediately because I had known it at the age of 3, right? So I knew what he was there for. And so thank God that that happened to me at 3, because I went on to bring in 14 laws and literally save millions of children in the process. So, what we think as a tragedy, what we judge ourselves as humanity, I think we we need to judge a lot less and realize that there is a reason. If you feel circumstances happen and you have to be in that situation and make that decision, you know I've learned a muscle test, that's for sure. I really check in now, and is this for my highest good and all concerned, the good of all concerned, right? It's and the words I live by. Okay, dear Lord, is this for my highest good and for the good of all concerned?
You mentioned your book.
Mhm.
What is the title and where can people go to learn more about it?
So this is the book, The 5 Lessons of Life. It won 3rd in the world for spirituality and philosophy. It beat out all of the New York best-selling Times books and all the big publishers. And it's a simple little self-published book. I had it on Amazon for since 2019, and it's been going down in numbers with Amazon, yet it's still ranked like in the top 10, top 15 in Amazon. So it makes no sense why I'm not seeing the sales. So I've decided to actually take it off Amazon because I know that there are sales there. And, I don't want to, villainize anyone by any means, but it's been a push for me to actually put it out there myself. So right now, yes, you can still get it on Amazon, but I will be taking it off the big corporations, the mega corps, because I think there's some control happening there with a lot of spiritual books, right? Spiritually based books. So I'm going to be offering it myself directly and printing it up myself. So, but in the meantime, you can get it 36 different countries around the world. It's an international bestseller, and yeah, the reviews are outstanding. Read the reviews; they're so beautiful. I'm really blessed.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you
Right.
open to that?
Of course, yes. That's why I'm here. Right. So my email address is support@carriekohan.com. And Carrie is like the movie. It's a terrible way to remember, but it's Carrie. And Kohan is KOHAN as in Nancy. So support@carriekohan.com. And or you can come to my website, carriekohan.com.
Carrie, before we finish up, can you leave
Mhm.
us with one last positive message?
It's all about the spirit song. It's all about uniting together in voice, in song. So I was walking through London, England 2 days ago, and the guy walked past me just shouting at the top of his lungs, singing a song. And he was singing an Irish ditty. He was just so in love with life. It was beautiful. And it made me giggle how in love with life he was. He was just at the top of his voice. And about 3 hours later, I'm circling around. I'm in a different district, and who's walking straight forward towards me is this same gentleman. And he wasn't singing now, but I stopped him and I said, "Are you the guy that was singing?" And he laughed and he said, "Yes." And so we talked a little bit about the power of our voice, the power of what we say, and the power of our song. And he goes, "That's just it. I've come to realize that no one can stop me from singing." We've seen that when there were situations in Italy. People naturally sang when they were not able to go out. What did they do? They opened the windows and they sang. And the same in Shanghai, same thing. They were singing. There were things flying over top saying, "Do not sing," because it's a vibration, right? We need to lift that vibration. We need to start to sing together. So, sing in your house, sing in the shower, sing, at the kitchen table, just sing when you're walking outside, like that gentleman. I thought, he's so brave, and then I realized it's not bravery, it's our essence. We are humankind, and kindness is our namesake. We need to be kind and sing.
Carrie, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Jeff Mara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.